Alrighty, beautiful people, here we are back on the Virtus Performance podcast. We have a new guest who's also an old guest. He's been around the traps a little bit. Andrew, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
The Mayor of Mornington. I knew
no,
that.
thank you. I was thinking about this before I was jumping on. Am I the least fit person that's been on this podcast?
Absolutely not. Mitch has been on. No, Mitch is pretty fit at the moment.
Man, he's double figures. Good on him.
Yeah, no, he's doing very, very well. I mean, fitness is more of a state of mind than a.
I like the diplomatic
embodiment.
answer. That's okay.
No, you got all right. We just need to
fine.
We just need to get you back in here a little bit more often. But you're certainly one of the more injured humans I've ever met.
I reckon if there's a trophy for like length of time between injuries shortest, that would be me.
Oh no, I'm just going to go and have a couple of shots. Next thing you know, you call me, cooked your Achilles.
The last one, yeah.
Bit rough, but how is it going, by the way? How is the rehabs back into life?
Yeah, it's not too bad. I actually stood in goals for some indoor soccer for the last 5 minutes of the game the other day,
Jesus.
and within 5 seconds a goal was kicked on me. Literally walked in. We were up. I think 5-0.
Yeah.
Walk in, clean sheet so far, and bang, top right corner. The guys say, "Oh, that was on us," and I'm like, I reckon I just did a crap job there.
Probably just halve the responsibility for that.
Yeah.
But for those that don't know Andy's been on the podcast before, back in late 2017, early 2018, somewhere around that.
Somewhere around there.
We talked about you keeping people out of jail. We talked about you bringing. What would be the word you use?
It's like authenticity.
Authenticity into a space which is very, or for a long time, just been
very stereotypically structured, not necessarily enjoyable. Accounting. That's what it is that we do.
Numbers and things.
For those on the podcast who don't know what I do, I have a background in accounting and taxation. I built an accounting firm that's now just over 20 people, and we keep people out of jail, but our point of difference is probably more relationally how we work with our clients as opposed to necessarily what we do, because everyone does the same thing, right? Like it's kind of like at a gym, they come here to work out to some extent, but how you work out with them is different. So how we look after our clients that's what makes it different.
Yeah, and one of the things that makes you so special and so loved within the community is just that you're values-led, you're values-based. Everything that you do, there's a clear reason and almost like an evolutionary purpose behind it, because you know how beneficial it can be when people are chasing the shit that they love to do.
Totally. Yeah, and I think a lot of that is built off personal experience and stuff as well, right? So having run a business myself and then had a whole bunch of fringe involvements as well, I've learned so much about what it means to do that, and then you overlay that when you work with your clients and saying, well, hey, we lodge tax returns and it's important, it's valuable, but really, what are you trying to do with business and how's that going to impact your life? And then how do we support you in that space to do it well?
Yeah, and it's been, and obviously for those that want to dive back into that first initial conversation, just scroll down a whole bunch.
Forever. Just doom scroll.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the title is Keeping People Out of Jail, and it was around episode 20 or 30 of the first season, so a little while ago. How has that drive, desire, mission grown, evolved over the last 5 or 6 years? Big question, I know.
Yeah, like I guess like if you look back then to now, the scale of what it is that we as a business, that myself as an individual does, is significantly more. We've back then we would have had a team of 5 or 6. Now we've got a team of 20 odd. Back then we were just renting a space in Mount Eliza. Now we've bought a factory in Mornington, fitted it out with our space upstairs, co-working, podcast recording room, event space, whiskey bar. So we've kind of like the scale of what we've done. Back then, I would, share stories on podcasts like this, which are great and amazing, and like millions of listeners, obviously.
Obviously.
Now I've been lucky enough to like travel the world and stand on stage and talk to people about what it means to run a business with purpose, but in like, I guess, my profession and field, to encourage and inspire in that space. So like the the message or the values haven't necessarily changed, but the opportunity to share and then the scale that's come with has. I've also got 2 more kids.
Which you love.
Which I love. A lot more whiskey.
Yep.
Plenty of sneakers.
Yeah. If you want a little picture of a whiskey guy / sneakers guy, this is it.
Do you put the filming stuff out there too?
Oh yeah.
I should have chosen what I was wearing.
I know, right? No, you're looking fine. You look good.
I'll do.
You look good. So how? I guess one of the things that I've always been fascinated by is how have you embraced and looked at the opportunity that you've been given to essentially be a spokesperson for your industry, to the many accountants and taxation specialists out there that are doing what you're taught to do. Look at spreadsheets, deal with numbers, go from numbers into people. How have you dealt with that responsibility, and how has that grown over the last half a decade?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I can't recall if at our last conversation I won this award in 2018. Thought Leader things. So Thought Leader of the Year award. Literally yesterday I found out that I'm finalist for that award again, 5 years later, which is
love that.
Which is awesome. I think there's any time you start being recognised as a thought leader, a person of interest, a lot of opportunities come your way, but a big challenge is how you manage that ego-wise.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think when you're in positions like that, and it's not just the accounting industry that I get to impact and work with. A lot of clients almost want to be a part of Illuminate because they see what we do and they learn from that.
Well, it has a level of gravity that
it does,
sucks people
because it's business. At the end of the day, the thing that I do is the thing, but the how I go about it is that's business.
Yeah.
But I think looking at that, the really important thing is you have to approach it with a mindset of what is good for this community, not what is good for me.
Yep.
And I've been really bad at that at sometimes. I've been really good at that at sometimes. And the more I look at opportunities or when people want to have conversations, I think the first thing is what value is the people that I'm communicating looking to get out of this? What is it they need help with? What is it they need to understand? And then how can I go about providing that with the knowledge that I have and the way I've gone about it? And often when I talk, I like to kind of, how are we the same person? Yes, I might have beards, tattoos, drink whiskey, and be a bit crazy, but we're kind of just humans at the end of the day.
For sure.
What is the myth that you believe in? How do I debunk it? And now let's build it up together in a way that we feel like together we're agreeing on that thing, as opposed to some angry dude who's yelling at you from stage saying you're all suck.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess part of that's just meeting people where they're at and
totally
being a friend on the journey with them to help them figure out what it is that they love to do and what it is that they value and how they can build a life and a career that helps people, makes the world a better place, but then also fills them up at the same time.
And I think there's the authenticity element of this is about don't pretend that everything's perfect, because it's not. There are so many times that I've heard people communicate ideas or share things, and I'm like, I know that you're hiding something. Yeah. You're hiding the fact that actually that's not necessarily truth in your world, but it's an idea that you have. Yeah. And that I don't have a problem with people sharing ideas that are good, if it's not a reality for them. But I think what's more powerful is when they can share that this isn't a reality for me, but this is something that I'm striving towards.
Yes.
And so for me, for a while, I shared a lot about stories of how I'd let my family down, and how that was a big driving factor for me and my business and the way I structure and the way I do it, because I want to be a good husband, I want to be a good parent, but I need to make sure that I'm sharing these moments to become more relatable, so people don't just go, oh, you've got all your shit together. Yeah. You must be. I remember, I'm allowed to swear on this, right?
You can say whatever the fuck you want.
I can't remember if I said this story all the years ago, but no one listened to it back then, so I'll say it again. But I remember I was on a panel once and where they were talking about employees. And how do you find them and how do you make them good? And it was literally it was like 4 of us there. It's like we went up and down and we just said the same generic answer. Yeah. Oh, you just got to care for them. Yeah. Make sure you look after them. Yeah. And I'm like, and we kind of it got to the end and I was like, I'm just going to call it out. Like just because I'm sitting on this seat doesn't mean I'm any better than you who are sitting in the audience. But to be honest, you might be running a better business than me. Just yesterday, I had two of this was years ago, not now, but I had two of my team 2 years ago verbally arguing with each other, yelling at each other in the office.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm now on stage talking about people.
Employee, team culture.
My business is fucked. As all of our businesses are, but the reality is that we're just bold enough to talk about that, and through that boldness, good shit happens, right?
Oh, 100%. Like, I don't know, like we've both been in business a long time now, and you look back, and I guess it's probably part of that like bravado of being early in business. You feel the need to pretend everything's great and pretend everything's perfect, but ultimately, we're all kind of just holding it up, with sticks sometimes, but ultimately we're going through the shit, and everyone's going through the shit. And the thing that I've started to realize over the last few years is like we had the COVID stuff, and then we had the rebuild stuff, and now you're kind of in that like valley of like, oh fuck, what's next? It's always hard, and it's always difficult, and there's always a problem. You get more competent at overcoming them, and you get better at asking for help, and you get better at spreading the load and essentially dealing with the shit that you're thrown at. But those problems don't go away. Whether I'm sure, we look at Illuminate now, and people would say, fuck, it's running smoothly, it's going perfectly, everything's going great. And there'd be elements of that which are completely true, but there'd also be elements of like, there's so many things going on behind the scenes that people don't see. Like, can you speak to that idea around like 100%. Perfection a little bit? Like
100%. Like I like my opinion is like, and this is from every business that I've worked with, and I've worked with thousands over the years. We have a good 350, 400. I'm guessing that number that we work with currently.
Yep.
Every business is like on a knife's edge. It's like your goal is to try not to sharpen the edge. Because the sharper it is, the easier it is for it to fall off that. So, but all you need is like 2 or 3 things to go wrong successfully, and you might be in a lot of trouble. So you're just hoping that only one thing at a time you recover. But then that's why often we have this state of overwhelm. It's like it feels like things are constantly going wrong because you solve it and then something else happens. But that's life, right? Like all of a sudden it rains and there's a bit of flooding. Shit, now I got to deal with that. Or all of a sudden, my kid's gotten sick. All of a sudden, this client wants to leave. That's life, and it happens. And the more we can understand that, we get better at it. And we build our capacity to deal with that shit. Like, I think it's a really, like, I love relating business and life because it's the same thing. Like, you become more capable and things like that. But you have moments where you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm going backwards. I'm not sleeping. I'm not doing this, whatever. You've worked with so many businesses. What are the kind of key actions or key things that you would suggest people lean back into when it feels like there's just domino effect of things going wrong? So I inadvertently got a piece of advice, which wasn't really a piece of advice, and I just kind of turned it into a phrase that goes like, you're not defined by what you go through, but how you go through it. So the difference is like there's always going to be stuff that you're dealing with. Some of that stuff for you might be significantly bigger than it could be for the person next to you who might be experiencing the same thing. That's okay. Like, we need to go through the stuff the way that we go through it and how we feel and how we experience it. But the way we go through that is important. And that's where our value and our character stands up. So, if someone's challenging you based off the work you've done, maybe they're saying, I don't think it's worth it. I don't want to pay your bill. Or I don't think this gym environment's good. I think it's toxic or whatever. Like, you could be an absolute prick about it, right? Or fuck you, you piece of shit. You don't know what I'm going about. I'm fucking smarter you. You can get fucked. Or you can utilize your values and your character, and you can understand and appreciate and communicate in a way that makes sure that I kind of liken it to like either my 65-year-old self would be proud of me or my mum would be proud of me.
That's a good way of looking at it.
And as a result of that, who I am defined for is by the way that I deal with stuff, not necessarily what I've gone through. So I could be a successful accountant, or I could be a non-successful accountant. It doesn't matter, but what matters is how I manage that and the person I am in the midst of that. And I think a lot of our identity, and this is where the authenticity comes back, is a lot of our identity is often caught up to what we do at work and how successful we are. And that defines who we are as a person, when I don't think it should, because a lot of that stuff is often out of our control.
Well, I've no doubt you've gone through that process of identity being wrapped up in Illuminate and who you are and what you're doing and things. How's that process been for you in growing out of that and being able to say, Illuminate is what I do. It's not who I am.
Yeah, I think for me it was relatively easy, but at the same time, I think externally it might not have looked that way.
Yeah.
Particularly for, I think, the accounting industry who would look at Illuminate and see me and Illuminate as one, or for people who are close enough to me who would look at Illuminate and see me as one. Yeah. But personally, I feel like people who work around me might disagree on this, and I'm more than comfortable with that. My approach has always been the Illuminate is the makeup of the people within it, the team that we have. Not the individual, but there's always in a business an individual that drives it. And me being the founder who's been there for now 11 years, obviously it will have a lot more of my DNA and my approach than it would others because of the consistency of what that looks like. Yeah. But it is about trying to be more aware of what other people's perspectives, opinions, and how you might go on things. And we've definitely made decisions and done things over the years that have been driven by others that have gone really well. Yeah. Some that haven't. Things that I've thought that go really well and things that haven't. But it is really allowing that environment to be one where you can have those conversations. Yeah. The challenge then is, well, do we just end up in this big open, too many cooks in the kitchen kind of environment, and we don't have clear direction and clear leadership as a result? So there's a real balance. It's almost like they're fighting against each other of like, we need to be super inclusive, but we'll get nothing done.
Like, it's almost like just pendulum swinging. It's like there needs to be times where there would have been times where you're like, we need to do this and this is why, because not necessarily because I said so, but essentially because I said so. And there's going to be times where you're on the other side of it, you're like, all right, we need to let the team drive this change or drive this process adaptation so that we can then move forward. And ideally you'd like to be smack bang in the middle where it's a collaborative moving forward environment, but there's always going to be that little swing.
It's like I'm learning a lot more about myself and the way my behaviour is, and a bit about neurodiversity and all these things that people have always said about me. But like understanding, like, I'd love to just be consistent. And it's like, Andrew, I love the fact that you'd like to be that, and it's an admirable thing. Yeah. But for you, given who you are and how you're made, it's not going to happen. But also, that's the beauty of it. Like, if you can use that in a positive way. You're going to get to do cool shit and you'll have a great environment and it'll be fun and it'll be enjoyable.
Yes.
But when it's done in a negative way, it's manic, it's opportunistic, it's depressing, it's inappropriate. So it's about balance. The pendulum swimming, it's about ensuring that's as balanced as it possibly can be and that you've got an environment
and building
around.
Awareness so that when things are getting negative, things are getting manic, that here's what I need to do to get us back on the right track, or get you back on the right track. Totally.
And that's like we're lucky enough. Like we've built a really good leadership team. People that I trust and I rely on to the point where right now I'm 3 months into 4.5 months not working. We've had a third kid. So I want to take some time to be around, and whilst I'm still fluttering around the edges, I'm practically not there.
Huge.
And that's huge in terms of like the direction of a business, your ability to grow, your ability to maintain stuff, the burden that you have on your shoulders.
Yeah, well, it being so much of your DNA, it's great for the team, for your clients, for the community, for you to be able to step back and things still move forward and progress and maybe not happen exactly the way you would do them, which is probably the best part about it.
But that's where agreed values come in really important, right? Like, what are our values?
What are we actually trying to achieve?
Do we agree that they are? Like, have we got an agreed approach that we have for making decisions? What are the guiding principles of certain things, of an experience here? Yeah. And then hopefully what that means is the collective group, both the leadership and the entire team, can kind of call stuff out in a respectful way when maybe something's not going according to that kind of set environment that you want it to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love the idea. Like, we think about it in sports teams, like you're a steward of the team or the organisation or the business. Like, you look at, like, I'm a Collingwood supporter. I love what's happening at Collingwood at the moment, which we love. How good is Anzac Day, by the way?
As a Bombers fan, it's horrible.
But you look at it and it might be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Everything's changed. New players, new coaches, new admin staff. But the club is still the club. Collingwood's been Collingwood for 150 years or something like that. So I think it's fascinating if we look in business as the same thing. It's like, we want our businesses to be infinite. We want them to be an infinite. How can it stand
the test of time? How can this business be something that we look at today and we reflect on where it's been and we appreciate both and recognising that it will be different. But that's not a bad
Exactly.
thing.
Different is better.
That's the hard thing as a founder, though.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what you find about with Virtus as well, is that as you let go of stuff, you see things happening which are good, but they might not be the way that you would go about
100%.
it. And then how do you not interject? Because as soon as you start interjecting, what that is saying to the person is you don't trust them or you don't believe in their approach. And there's a good way and a bad way to go about it. Sometimes you just got to kick back and go, I just need to shut the fuck up and let it happen.
Yeah, and let it happen, imperfectly, because it certainly happened imperfectly when I was driving all the shifts, for sure.
Absolutely.
And I think it's like, I like the idea of just surrendering to it, and surrendering to it with a level or a layer of trust and love and acknowledgement that it's going to be okay. There's an Andy Warhol quote that I love. It's the idea isn't to live forever, but create something that will.
Yeah.
And whether Virtus and Illuminate are here in 50, 100 years time, for me doesn't matter, but I want to act and
we're playing the infinite game.
Do things like that, like it's going to be exactly the infinite game, 100%. Talk us through what your week looks like now, relatively speaking, to what it used to look like when we first did the podcast. And
I mean, now is a little bit abnormal, but
I guess what you want your week to look like going forward, because everything in your life for me, like outside in, and like obviously we know each other pretty well now. Like we've had a lot of chats around why it's happening and what's happening and things like that. But from a life by design perspective, one of the things I respect about you the most is you are truly creating a life that's by your design.
So 5 years ago, I was still heavily on the tools. And on the tools in an accounting firm means I would be meeting with clients, I would be doing accounting work, I'd be lodging tax returns, I'd be holding meetings to talk about business direction, but also I'd be doing the back end side of the business stuff.
Yeah.
I think I was even still potentially doing the bookkeeping of Illuminate at that time as well. I let that go eventually. So I was kind of doing everything.
Yeah.
And at the scale where we were, some weeks that would be a normal-ish week. Other weeks it would be an absolute bedlam, stupid level of amount of hours week. If I wanted to take time off, which I hadn't, we went on a trip to Europe for 6 weeks after our thing. I had to literally live in the office for 4 straight days to get to the point where I could not be there for 6 weeks, as well as everything leading up. So there was a lot more on my shoulders, a lot more responsibility. I was a lot more involved in it. I still loved it and I still enjoyed it. But progressing to now having 3 children,
life's so different.
It's so different, but also I guess if I speak specifically to right now. So right now I'm in the middle of 4.5 months off.
Yeah.
I've made the decision that when I return back to Illuminate, that I'm only going to come back in a limited capacity.
Huge.
And I'm trying to not create a time investment on that. Because for me, I want it to be about outcomes. I want to ensure that what the business requires from me, I'm delivering. So I'm kind of calling it, it's a founder growth role. I understand this business quite intimately. I know what it looks like. I believe in it so much that I can sell it to other people, and thus I can draw people into the world of Illuminate and then allow my team, who then execute on the operation on the day-to-day side of stuff, to do what they're brilliant at, and I can get the fuck out of their way. Because as a founder of a business, when you've done everything, side note, the worst thing you could say to a team member is, mate, look, I've done everything here. So just, I know what you're going through. Because
there's not a lot of utility to that statement. It's a lot of self.
I've said it so many times, and every time I say it, the facial reaction from the person you're saying to is, Andrew, you can get fucked right now. But when I return, I'm going to, in that limited capacity, that's what I'm going to do. I'm looking at being more involved in the industry, because I'm passionate about the potential of the industry, what we could do. Not saying it's bad now, but saying if we constantly look at our potential, that means we can be that little bit better here and there. And then I'm also really focusing on family. And family is not just my wife and my kids, but it's also like my mum and my dad. So right now, my day-to-day looks like getting out of bed, getting the kids fed, making lunches, driving them to school, On a Wednesday, I pop into the office and I still spend about 2 to 4 hours just in conversations with the leadership team in more of a support element. You know, what are you working on? How are you approaching that decision? This is what I might think. And the team are finding their way into having those conversations with me as well, because it's about them being prepared for what they want to talk about, as opposed to them sitting there and going, what do you want to know, Andrew?
Yeah.
So we have that element. And then outside of that, it's things like this, catching up with mates, it's having conversations, and it's thinking probably more broadly about what my future looks like, which to some extent is really difficult to do.
Yeah, it's hard.
Because everything you've been about for the last 11 years have been this one thing and your family.
Yes.
But it's realistically, whilst I love and appreciate my family, I haven't focused on them like I have on my business. Yeah. So it really is changing that focus. So when it hits July, I'll be, a day or 2 or 3 days a week with Illuminate, depending on what we're trying to deliver and my involvement at that point in time. I'll be doing maybe a day or 2 a week of industry stuff, and I'm going to take over my dad's plumbing shop.
Love that.
Which is always, when I tell people that, they're like, oh, that's different.
Yeah.
But I don't know about with parents and yourself or anyone else who might be listening as well. Like growing up, I always said to dad and mum, they're still together, I'm going to buy you a house one day.
Yeah.
Because I think when I decided I was going to do accounting, I was like, I'm going to make a fuck ton of money, bitches. I'm going to buy you a house one day. And the reality is, not going to buy.
No, it's a little harder than that, unfortunately.
A little harder than that. But
the ideal's solid.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The idea was always there, and the intent was always that I want to be able to support you guys the way that you've supported me when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And so the way I'm actually going to act that out is my dad wants to retire. He's wanted to retire for ages. He runs a retail plumbing store.
Yeah.
We've been trying to sell it, and it's fallen over at the final hurdle 3 or 4 times for very valid reasons. Not that it's bad. It's a great bloody business.
Yeah.
So I've just said, you know what? In this transition stage thing about family, I want you to spend the next 20 years of your life doing what you want. So I can enable that by taking over this business.
Amazing.
So I'm sell taps and toilets.
I love that.
As well.
If anyone needs taps and toilets, talk to Andy.
But what it also now means is I'm running an accounting firm, running a plumbing business, doing industry stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah, so also we have this co-working space that we do. We have events that happens there. There's a lot that's happening. So to some extent, the way I operate and think, having a lot is good.
Yes.
But the reasoning behind all this was to be a better husband and to be a better father.
Yeah. It just allows you the freedom to rearrange those priorities and give what's needed. Yeah. Well, I mean, the proof will be in the pudding.
But that's where you need good accountability around you, right? That's where you need mates who can be like, hey, like what's going on? That's where you need to have a good relationship with your spouse, and they can say, you said you were going to be there, and you're not.
Yeah. And having just a clear understanding of what winning actually looks like for you.
Yeah. And people have asked me around this decision, because decision isn't just I'll just kick back, own this accounting firm and cruise around in yachts and shit.
Yeah.
Part of my decision making around this is, if I'm not fully invested in this business of Illuminate, I feel it's unreasonable for me to have decision making control over its future. Because I'm not as invested into it as much as I'd like to be. Yeah. And that's a twofold thing, because if I have decision-making control, I'll be too invested and I won't be able to release myself.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the team will continue to take further ownership. They already have elements of equity ownership. They'll take on some more. And then I'll move into a minority ownership and I'll deliver it is what I want to do. And people have asked, why wouldn't you just take it? I'm like, well, there's reasons why. They're like, that's going to cost you? I'm like, yeah. Picture piling up a shit ton of money in a bonfire and then lighting it on fire. And they're like, oh, that must hurt. I'm like, yeah, but I don't need it.
Yeah, it's not the thing that lights you up, or it's not the thing that makes you want to.
Life is comfortable. We're lucky that I've been able to, I guess, professionally with a career, do what I've done to date. And I don't have holiday homes and, multiple cars and all that kind of stuff. I've got a lot of whiskey.
Fucking shit ton of whiskey.
But we have a very comfortable and blessed life. So I don't need the stuff that's burning in the corner. What I don't want to be putting there to burn is my wife and my kids.
And wanting it for the sake of it,
can't believe we're just talking about burning children.
It comes at a cost, yeah. Maybe we'll just move along. You mentioned before that you've had the comment from a few people of oh, that's amazing, that's great, but I could never do that. what's the process been like? Because obviously it's not like just a one-day thing where you're like, you know what, when the next one comes, we're having 4 months off. Like, it's been a process, and it's been something that you've been working towards for a decent period of time. Like, you've been talking about it for a few years as the potential. Like,
well, the goal was always
like?
with Illuminate was make myself redundant. And I think any business that's out there, your goal should be to make yourself redundant in your business. That doesn't mean you can't work in it.
No.
But you should build a business that doesn't heavily rely on you. Which
means you get to work on the shit that matters.
Absolutely. It means you can take time off. It means if you go to sell it, it's worth something. All of those kind of things. You might still work in it 7 days a week because you love it and live it and breathe, and that's fine. But so that's always been my intention to get to the point. I remember when I've talked about it with other people in my industry, a lot of people are like, oh, that's good for you, but it could never happen to me. And I'm like, I don't think you realise the situation I'm in. Like, I've gone and bought a factory. I have a shit ton of debt. The interest rate has tripled over the last 2 years on that debt. I have a house that has debt that the interest rate has tripled over the last couple of years on that. I've just had a third kid. My wife, cares for our family and thus financially isn't contributing towards our ability to like. There is a lot of pressure on me. As an individual.
The liabilities aren't getting smaller.
No, man, and that's because of my decision making process. Like, that looks like a fucking cool thing. Let's go and do it. So it's not like I've just cleared all my debt and it's like, I don't need to work. Let's go on. But I think what it is for me is like there's the importance of the decision of the future. So when we found out we were having Jericho, who's our son now, we had not planned to have a third child. There's a fun story. I can share it if you want me to, but I don't need to.
Nah, go on.
You want me to share the snippy snap?
If you want, if you'd like to.
So for those who are contemplating not having any more children, I would encourage them, if that is something they definitely want to not happen, to deal with that quick. I went to go and get the snip through the little laser walk-in, walk-out thing, and after 15 minutes of fondling where I thought, maybe this guy's going to pay me for the experience, I got told that I was not suitable for laser because of the way I'm made up down there, and I had to go and to get general anaesthetic, which was tough enough because I'd built myself up for that moment.
To get it done, It
was during kind of in and out lockdown, pandemic-y things, so it took 6 months to see the surgeon, paid him $200 for him to pull out his phone and check his diary to see when he could actually do the operation. And then that was 3 months later. And we planned to do it the day we got back from Fiji. A week before Fiji comes, wife's pregnant.
It's I don't know, life, hey? Like, it's a fascinating just look at just sliding doors moments, decision making, like how the things that go on in the universe change the whole future for you guys as a family.
Well, it accelerated my focus. Like the funny part of the story was then our Fiji trip got delayed by 2 days. I didn't get the snip. Then I was going to get it in Feb, but our son was born early, so I didn't get it then. Then I was going to in April. The day of operation got cancelled. Didn't get it then, and I luckily had it 3 weeks ago now.
How are you feeling?
Better now.
It's not the most fun couple of weeks, is it?
Oh yeah, it wasn't. I had my moments. I'm better now.
Good.
But so going back to that. We've just found out we're having a kid and processing that. The very next day was my team's 5-year vision retreat. And so as the leadership of the team, we were sitting down for 2 days to talk about the future of the business. What does the next 5 years look like? And the first session on the first day was, what is your 5-year vision for your life? And I'm sitting there going, what the fuck? We're having another kid.
Life changes like that.
And for my wife and I, we were immediately like, we're having this kid. Like, there wasn't a question about whether we would or wouldn't. It was like, we're in. I think Ivana was a little bit nervous for how I was going to respond. But I was like, fuck yeah, if we're going to have a third kid, this is the best way. Because my arm wasn't twisted. Which is a surprise. But after then, probably we went to Fiji and then coming back and whatnot, I started reflecting on what the next 10 years of my life would look like. And what does my family need? So what does my wife need? What do my kids need? I've got a 9 and a 6-year-old daughters, and now I've got a newborn son. What do they need? And then I look at Illuminate and I said, what does this business need from me? And then I look at that and I say, am I capable of delivering both of them at the same time? Not a fucking chance. And maybe there are people out there that can, because they're superheroes, but the environment of Illuminate and what my family needs from it. There's no way I could do that.
I think it's an incredibly honest way to just build that self-awareness of like, what does this thing need right now? Like what, and then there's what
and
do
what
you
will it
need
need
right
as
now?
well? Like
Yeah.
right now, it's a newborn son, and like he eats, he shits, he sleeps. Like it is what it is. But
Yeah.
like in a year's time when he's walking, in a few years' time when he's at school, like,
Yeah.
and then you've got the elder children who are like going through education,
Proper teenagers.
they
Yeah.
need support and guidance. It's like, man, like if I leave that all to my partner, how fucking selfish of
Yes.
that is me.
Yeah.
So I looked at that and I went, you know what? I don't think it's possible for me to do both. And so then I had to think about, well, how do I approach this?
Yeah.
What do I do? Do I sell the business? Do I change some things? Do I just step out? And I kind of made the call, like, first and foremost, it was family first. I have to be there for them. And then it was
Yeah.
like, how do I step this through? And then I communicated that with the leadership team, I think a month or so after.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know we were having the kid. We then did a broad team thing.
Yeah.
And right at the end, I'm like, oh, shit, I forgot to say something. Ivana's pregnant.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, what? They thought they were a bit shocked. And then
Yeah.
after that, I just
Because it's a
talked-
different reaction, like for your first, when you kind of people know
Totally.
you're trying. It's like,
That's
oh my
so
God,
good.
that's amazing. But then, like, I guess the gravity of the impact of that change
Totally.
would have hit the team straight away.
And
Because,
they were great about it. Like they were stoked, but it definitely was a bit of a whole like, holy shit, what?
Yeah.
You're having a third kid? That's crazy. We didn't expect that.
yes.
You didn't you not want a third kid?
Yeah.
And I like, I don't want Jericho to ever feel like he
Yeah.
wasn't wanted. He absolutely was
Yeah.
wanted, and but it was like we didn't plan on having a third kid,
Yeah.
so it was a surprise.
Yeah.
But it is. It's like, what is your stake in the ground? What have you said yes to?
Yes.
And as a result, you should be empowered to say no to something else. And for me, the no was what this business requires from me over the next 10 years in the role that I currently play. You know,
Yeah.
as the general manager, the CEO, the chairman of the board, whatever the fuck you want to say, like what that business needed from me, I wasn't going to be able to deliver it. But also, in reflection, I don't think I'm best suited for it anyway. Like
Yeah.
the founder, like, and I remember, so Xero, much larger business than mine or yours combined. We could kind of multiply our businesses by 100 and it
And
still
it
would be
wouldn't be
smaller.
close, yeah.
Accounting software business, really, really cool stuff. I remember, I've been on the journey for ages with them. I remember in one of the early days, I think it was maybe their first managing director in Australia, Chris Reed was his name. And I remember he finished up. Now, I don't know the backstory, whether he chose to, whether they kind of suggested he did or whatever it was. But I remember him sharing something around his decision that this is the right thing. And he talked about the founder mentality and the growth mentality and where his skill set is best delivered.
Yeah.
And that's kind of stuck with me for a bit of like, it's like, I'm really good with this growth stuff, but once we start having to mature and do these things,
Yeah.
I'm not the best person for that. And I look at myself saying, I'm really good at growing community, building a brand, creating culture,
Yeah.
doing stuff that might abnormally look crazy, but experientially is
Yeah.
awesome.
Which is whole different world to 11 years on.
But when we need structure and process, and when we've got 21 people's well-being reliant on you, you have to have more consistency and you
Yes.
have to be more focused. And thus, we have people in the team that have the ability to do that. So I've looked at that and I said, I'm not sure I'm capable of delivering what this needs. And
Yeah.
and if I pretend like I am, I'm probably going to hurt people more than I'm going to help
Yes.
them, right?
And you're not living true to that authentic self of who you want to be at work and how you want to show up and how you want to contribute to your team and community and
Totally.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the, I guess, thought process for you around like managing those competing commitments now? Because there's going to be times where the plumbing business needs you and, the team at Illuminator, not sure about something when, something's going on at the Rumble. Like, do you have a thought process around like, how am I going to deal with that and ensure that I give number one priority family all of me or enough of me?
I think what you find is that when you do things, it's still kind of all done as one. Like whilst it's individual things,
Yeah.
you find that your values and the way you approach everything kind of blends into one. So good example is like at Illuminate, we look after a number of specific industries that we kind of target. So creative, so marketing, those kind of people. We look after e-commerce, trades.
Yeah.
So if I stop at the number 3 one that we look after trades, I'm going to run a plumbing shop. We work after trades. One of my jobs is growth and opportunity in community.
Yeah.
So awesome. Here's an opportunity for me to be able to live the Illuminate vibe out through the business, and conversely ensure the plumbing business can then reciprocate that. So I look at that as how can I have them connected well.
Yes.
I then look at from an industry perspective, and I say, I'm how can I be involved as, whether it's as a brand ambassador with tech companies or whether it's, speaking on stage and encouraging others. Well, I know that if I deliver that well and I do it well, people will look at Illuminate and be like, oh, well, look at me, where is he from? He's from Illuminate. I want to work there. So now we've got opportunities for new team members to join, new businesses who might want to be a part of. So it is all interconnected.
Yeah.
But to your question, there always will be a point where it's like, someone's called in sick at the plumbing shop, we need you in.
Yeah.
You've got this meeting at Illuminate. The kids have got a dentist appointment we need to take them to.
Yeah.
And you've got to be on the Zoom call at 3 o'clock with the UK.
Yeah.
Well, not 3 o'clock, it'll be like 10 o'clock at night. But how do I don't know, man. I honestly, I've always had this kind of approach to life. Is like, I know everything will work out fine.
Yeah.
It will be okay, but you often overthink and overstress it in the moment. So
always.
Just getting to the point where like, it'll be fine. I'm going to have to let some people down.
Yeah.
I should be pretty good at communicating why that might be.
For sure.
And if you've chosen the right people to work with, they'll understand. If they don't understand it, you shouldn't have been working with them anyway. You shouldn't have been in that situation because it's not a good place to be. So
I like that.
But it'll be family first, always.
It's good, and it's good to be able to come back to that North Star as this is the decision making ace in the.
Here's a ladder. That's the thing. Like that's at the top of the ladder. That's the thing I have to be now. I also have to be mindful that I have an exceptionally amazing wife who allows me to do dumb stuff. Like last year, I went to the UK for 35 days,
which we love,
to speak at conferences and stuff.
Yep.
And the day I got back is probably when we fell pregnant.
Yeah.
But she lets me do stuff like that, which means which is awesome. But also, I'm like, babe, you're enabling me a little bit.
Yeah. but it's like there's support networks that we all need to be able to do the shit we love, right? Like
she recognizes I need to be filled up to a point so I
Yeah.
can be a good dad.
Yeah.
And if I'm not getting those things, then I'm not going to be the best person I can be around our family, because I'm going to be longing for it, missing for it, or I haven't. It's like you need to take the dog out for a run, you know?
Yeah, if it doesn't, it's going to chew on the couch, or it's going to ruin a pair of shoes or something. Yeah, that's a really good analogy, because we've all, and I think that you've built that self-awareness, and you and Ivana have built that connection so that she's able to see that in you when you don't see it. Like, Andy needs X or Y, and able to give you the space and time and freedom to do that, which is perfect. It's exactly what we want.
And the thing that I'm trying to learn and understand is like, what is that for her as well? Because it's all well and good for me to get what I need.
Yeah.
But if I'm not looking and saying, but what is it that you need?
Yes.
And quite often with her, and often this happens with, and I'm speaking just about my family experience, but I've heard it from other family experiences. When you have, say, the spouse, often the female spouse who is caring for the family, they need you to wash the dishes.
Yes.
They need you to let them sleep in the morning and you get the kids out of bed. They need you to read the story. They need you to do the homework. It's just like, if you can chip in and be a part of the stuff that I'm doing, whilst I know that in like the relationship kind of jobs, they kind of look after that thing. That's what fills them up. Yeah. Whereas for me, I need to go and do dumb shit. I need to go travel to I'm off to the UK in a month. I need to go to the UK. I need to speak on stage. I need to get out of me all these ideas and these thoughts and this kind of madness. And I need to be able to feel like I'm helping people in my industry that need that help.
It just comes back to the awareness point of like, all right, what does Illuminate anyone right now? What do you need right now? What do my family need right now? Being able to answer that honestly, with authenticity. 2 questions to finish off.
Cool.
First one, what are you most proud of?
I think it's a very recent thing, but I think I'm just most proud of the ability to make the decision that I've done.
Yeah, it's huge.
Which it's huge. Like for me, it felt like a no-brainer, but I think as I reflect on it with other people, and they kind of share a bit of a hold of what are you doing? Yeah. I think the gravity of that is there. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what I've been able to do so far. I'm proud of the dinners I've cooked and the nappies I've changed and that stuff. I'm proud. And I'm also proud, I guess, the environment. Like, we talk a lot about our kids.
Yeah.
We haven't really spoken about it much today, and how they're absolutely amazing right up until they're not.
Yeah.
I'm proud that I haven't damaged any of them whilst I've had all this time off. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's good. That's a good. Yeah,
Haven't dropped my
that's
son.
a good place to start.
You know, it's been good.
Awesome. What are you most excited for?
I think in my mind, there's a lifespan of the activities I'm about to enter into. So this plumbing shop's not a 20-year thing. It's a 3 to 5 year thing. Illuminate, depending on what it needs from me, I think it's got a lifespan on that of a 3 to 5 year.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm most excited for is seeing that come to fruition. With Illuminate, I always talked about this is not my business, it's others. I'm just a caretaker for now. So I look at that from an excited element of actually being able to have delivered the thing that I said I would. And then parlaying that in family, like actually doing the thing that I said that I would.
Yeah.
A lot of the times I talk about a lot of ideas, as all of us, it'll be great. I really want to go do this, or I would never say this, but like I want to go climb that mountain one day. And that's my bucket list. I really want to do it. But it just becomes a pipe dream that we never actually do anything for. And I think, my excitement is fulfilling some of these things that I've set out to do. And I can see it happening.
Yes.
It's not easy, but it is worth it. And I know that collectively, my family, myself, and the people around me will be better off because of it.
Yeah, I think following that last 60 seconds worth of little nugget of advice, like regardless of what you're doing, you're going to be able to create a life that makes your world a better place and the world a better place. So good from you.
100%, mate.
Love your work.
Love your work.
Pleasure as always.
Yeah.
Get around him. He's doing good things.
Get around us.
Have a good day.
Okay.